Alright, so now on to solving problems. First off, when you're solving, you want to see if you can factor anything at all out. In this one we can factor out a 7x squared, leaves x cubed minus 8, which is something cubed minus something cubed, which we just learned how to factor. And so, factor that into the binomial times the trinomial, and so that leaves square root of x cubed, square root of 8, same, opposite, always positive, x squared, these two times each other, and 2 squared is 4. If you multiply this out, you will get x cubed minus 8. Sum and difference of cubes is what this is called, or difference of cubes specifically. But so then either 7 equals 0, which can't happen, x squared equals 0, so x equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0, so x equals 2. So we've got 2 answers so far. And when you take the square root of both sides, square root of 0 is 0, and you could put plus or minus there, but plus or minus 0 is 0. And then x squared plus 2x plus 4 equals 0. Can't factor this anymore. So the only way to solve it is with the quadratic formula. So negative 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared, 2 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 4. Yes, this is back. We did this last unit, and we need to know how to do it now. So negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 12 over 2 and so this is negative 2 plus or minus 12 is 4 times 3 times negative 1. So we have square root of 4 is 2 I root 3. This came from the 4, this came from the negative 1, and the 3 I can't do. And so then our final answer, we can take the 2 out of everything. Negative 1 plus or minus I root 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this answer is a double root, and so it counts twice. Alright, so let's solve another. We can move the 2 over, and so you get 128 y to the 6th plus 2 equals 0. You can pull out the 2 and you get 64 y to the 6th plus 2 equals 0. And then binomial times a trinomial. So 4y squared, that's the cubed root of that. Oops, when you take a 2 out of a 2, it leaves a 1. Plus 1. So we'll have this squared, goes right here, so 16y to the 4th. These two times each other, and we're going to subtract those, minus 4y squared, plus 1 squared, or just plus 1 on the end. So either 4y squared plus 1 equals 0. So 4y squared equals negative 1. Y squared equals negative 1/4. So this is y equals plus or minus the square root of negative 1/4. The square root of the negative gives you an I, and square root of 1/4 is 1/2. So plus or minus 1/2 I. And then when you take care of this one, you're going to have to use a quadratic formula again. Except that these are going to be equal to y squared each time. And so this is actually a little more complicated than what I wanted to get into. So if you would, we're going to leave this one for right now. We can do it, it's just when you solve it, it's going to give you y squared, and then you'll have to take the square root of everything that you get as an answer. So if you want, let's just cross this one out. But that's how we factored. I wanted to give us practice factoring. That's the biggest thing. X cubed minus 3x squared minus 4x plus 12. Anytime you have 4 terms, you want to factor by grouping. So you can pull out an x squared, that leaves x minus 3. You can pull out a negative 4, that leaves x minus 3. And so these two are the same, so you can pull those out front. And so this one, don't leave it there. You can factor it some more if you want. X plus 2, x minus 2, that's the difference of squares. So x equals 3, x equals negative 2, and x equals positive 2. All of those. Excellent. Alright, another. Let's move the y cubed over and make it positive. Y cubed plus 7y squared minus 9y minus 63. You can group them. Pull out the y squared. Leaves y plus 7. Pull out the negative 9. That leaves y plus 7. So anytime you have 4 terms, factor by grouping. Y plus 7 is the same. Pull out the y plus 7. Y squared minus 9. So y plus 7 equals 0. So y equals negative 7. And if we wanted to factor completely, we could write this as y plus 3, y minus 3. But it also works if you just say y squared minus 9 equals 0. So y squared equals 9. And y equals plus or minus 3. And now I just obeyed my own rule of factoring it completely and then solving. But so this goes to y plus 3, y minus 3 in there. Alright, next one. 3b to the 6th. We can pull out a 3b squared out of everything in there. We get b to the 4th plus 2b squared plus 1. So we have b squared and b squared, because those make b to the 4th. And this needs to be 1 and 1. And so either this equals 0, which really is b squared equals 0, and b equals 0, plus or minus if you want to take the square root and do all that. This is the same, so you only need to do this once. B squared plus 1 equals 0. B squared equals negative 1. B equals plus or minus the square root of negative 1, which is I. Yes, the imaginary numbers are not going away. Alright, real number solutions of the equation. So, had we actually said that up here, this would not have been a solution because it's not a real number. But you get the gist. So, x to the 4th minus 3x squared plus 2. You can do the same thing. Get x squared. What multiplies to 2? 2 and 1. It's got to be negative and a negative. So x squared minus 2 equals 0. So x squared equals positive 2. And then x equals plus or minus the square root of 2. And then this factors into x plus 1, x minus 1. And so x equals negative 1, x equals positive 1. Or, add the 1, take the square root, you get plus or minus 1 as well. The thing to realize is that, so first off I look to see what I can take out. And we're using the same techniques that we used with quadratic equations. except this one's a quartic now, but then I can still do x squared and x squared, what multiplies to 12 and adds to 8, 6, and 2. So either x equals 0, x squared minus 6 equals 0, so x squared equals 6, and x equals plus or minus, take the square root of both sides, and x squared equals positive 2, so x equals plus or minus the square root of 2. And then the last one, x to the 5th minus 12x cubed plus 27x. Pull out the x. Leaves an x squared and an x squared. What multiplies to 27? 3 and 9. And if they're both minus, we can make this x plus 3x minus 3. And then notice that this is x squared minus 3, so it's different from those other two, because this will give us x equals 0, x equals negative 3, x equals positive 3, and x squared minus 3 equals 0 gives us x squared equals 3, and so x equals plus or minus the square root of 3. Alright, last problem. Going to do some serious solving. Dimensions of a jewelry box. Assuming it's a rectangular prism, are 2x, x minus 1, and the height x minus 3. If the volume is 24 cubic inches, find the dimensions of the box. So length times width times height, 2x times x minus 1 times x minus 3 equals 24. Length times width times height. I'm going to group these two together first and get x squared minus 3x minus 1x, so together that's a minus 4x, minus 1 times the negative 3 is plus 3, and then there's a 2x out in front. Remember that we can't just say, well, either 2x equals 24 and all of that, because this has to be 0. That's the only way it works. So then 2x cubed minus 8x squared plus 6x. And let's subtract the 24 and set it equal to 0. We can now group them. We can pull out a 2x squared. That leaves x minus 4. Pull out a 6. That leaves x. 24 divided by 6 is minus 4. So x minus 4 times 2x squared plus 6 equals 0. So either x equals 4 or 2x squared plus 6 equals 0. So 2x squared equals negative 6. So x squared equals negative 3. And x equals plus or minus the square root of negative 3, which will be I root 3. So that's an answer, but it's not an answer to our story problem because it's got to be real numbers. So our dimensions: 2 times 4, 4 minus 1, and 4 minus 3. So it's 8 inches .4 minus 1 is 3, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So 8 by 3 by 1. And that multiplies to 24. So we know we're right. Happy factoring and solving. Stick with it. It's a puzzle sometimes.